All right, welcome everyone. Chris Petri here. We're doing oil painting. We're just going to take a quick survey of what our game plan is for this video. Basically, we're going to paint this wine bottle, kind of an abstract feel to it. Some really nice mellow colors, some greens, some beiges, some yellow ochres, green bottle with some purple and blue, burnt umbers. We have some beautiful red, cadmium red and alizarin crimson in the bottle top here, and then also on the label. So we have a really fun, enjoyable color scheme here for this oil painting. We're going to show you how to use the palette knife. So we're going to work with a palette knife. We're going to work with several different size brushes as we paint along here. So you'll see the brushes we're going to use. I'll have the paints we're all going to mix here. So I have my palette. It's a wax paper palette. We're going to cover all the colors you're going to need and you're going to need to mix on this video, and we'll just go step by step, and for the next hour or so we'll create this wonderful painting together. Okay, so let's get started. All right, so we just saw our finished oil painting of our wine bottle. Let's start out with the process from start to finish. So the first thing we're using the Winsor Newton Artisan water mixable oil paints. That's what I'm using for my paints. Really safe to use. I use them similar to watercolor paints. Just a little bit of water to mix them and get them kind of fluid, especially for like lighter washes or applications of the paint. And then I use just the straight paint out of the tube for more thicker applications of paint as we're going. So our first bit of paint we'll put on the canvas will be a lighter, kind of thinner application, and then we'll get into the thicker paint as we go. And I'll use basically, this is a soft canvas that's stretched over some small wood. So I have this attached to my table. I might have to add a little more tape to this so that it doesn't move around. And I'm just using a simple palette knife, a number 10 by Blix palette knife, and then some these are hog hair brushes, Renish round hog hair brushes. So this is a 1, a 2, and a 4. So 1, 2, and a 4. And I just trim the handles down a little smaller because working in my setup that I have here, sometimes the longer brushes actually hit the camera and things, the video camera. So I just trim these down a little bit, and that's the brushes we'll use, and the palette knife. And then we have some wax paper. Essentially, this is like a made by Strathmore. Incidentally, all my art supplies are down below in the comment section, so you can click on that. Sometimes you have to click on the word more, and then you'll see all the links, and they're pretty much everything is linked over to Amazon.com. So you can go over there, you can shop, and everything just gets delivered to your house. And most times you can get free shipping a lot of times too on some of the products. So that's a really good deal at Amazon. I do all my shopping there, and for art supplies and everything else. Let's see now. We have, this is Strathmore, again, palette paper it's called. Strathmore palette paper. It's got a yellow cover on it. And again, it's really great. You can mix up your paint on here, and then when you're done for the session or done with a painting, you can just tear it off, and then you have another, 50 sheets left on it. You can just keep using those as you go. And that's about it. And then just a water container, rubberized water container. And I'll just put a little bit of water in that, maybe half filled. So we have some water to start with. I'll put some fresh spring water in there. We have our subject matter here, our photograph, reference photo of our green wine bottle. And we should be able to start. Let's just do a quick sketch first, and we'll kind of just go over quickly how we're going to, I'll use some black charcoal to sketch, and then I'll just use this to kind of describe how I'm going to render the bottle on the canvas first. First thing, let me add a little more tape to the canvas so it doesn't move around. Okay, that's good. So what I'll do is, I'll just probably, not sure, let's see what size this bottle is here. So we can usually, you can use a lot of different things to kind of measure. You can use like your artist brush if you want to sometimes, and just measure it and put the artist brush on the bottle like this, and then hold it here, and then that will be your size of your bottle. And then you can go over to your canvas and ask yourself, is that acceptable? Do you like the size of the bottle if it's this big in your canvas, or maybe you want it a little larger? If you want it a little larger than this, there's a way we can scale it. I'll actually do that now. Basically, it'll work like this. Like if we have this bottle over here in our reference photo, like this. So that's our bottle here. And then let's say we want to make it a little larger over here on the canvas. What we can do is basically start with one point of the bottle, which would be the top, and use that to scale over here on this. So what we would do is we will go here. We'll do it again in real time in a second, but I just want to kind of explain it. So we have our bottle here, on top of the bottle there. We would just take this and use this as our scale, the neck of the bottle up here, like that, and we would say, okay, now we're going to take this, and we can kind of just look over onto our canvas and say, well, if I start out and I kind of can see that I can start the neck of my bottle up here and it should be fine, then all it is a matter of taking this here and saying, okay, how many lengths is this bottle compared to the top of the bottle? So we can take our brush and just say, okay, that's once. And you can do it by eye. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this bottle is approximately four times this size right here of the neck of the bottle at the top. So now we can take this here and say, okay, 1. And you can also use a ruler if you want to. Once you get this established, you can just say, all right, what's the size of this here? Oh, it's a 1/2 inch. So then we can just go 4 times. So 1/2, 1, 1/2, 2. And then we have the bottle like that. So it's just a matter of keeping things in proportion. You can change the size of the bottle a little bit. You could make the neck a little taller of the bottle. You can make the bottom of the bottle a little taller. You can flare out the bottle if you want to. You know, you can change things around if you like. But we're going to go pretty accurate. We're going to try to use this as our guide to create the painting. And we can do the same thing for the label. We can look at this and say, okay, how many of the neck of this bottle? It's 1 inch, the neck of the bottle, and then if we come down here, it's another inch to the top of the label. So then we can do this here and say, okay, 1/2 inch here, another 1/2 inch here, and that gives us the top of our label. And then we can maybe get the rest of this, you know, there's a little bit of space here of the bottle on the side. And that's pretty much how we do create the scale of our bottle and the shape, and keeping everything looking, you know, satisfying as far as having an accurate drawing compared to our subject matter. So we'll do the same process again, just so we go over it a few times. Okay, so we said this was approximately 1 inch, the neck of the bottle. And then overall, the bottle is about 4.5 inches tall. And you can convert it over to centimeters if you're used to working in metric. The top of the bottle, the neck of the bottle here would be about 2.5 centimeters, approximately. So now what I'll do is I'll come over here and I'll start my bottle here maybe. If we want to, we can move the bottle over a little bit. Maybe we'll move it over here. Okay, so that's the top. And then we're just going to call this 1.5 inches. So we need four lengths. We can use our brush and just say we need 4 lengths. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I just leave my finger again on the brush. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that gives us the height of the bottle. Then we can look at the top of the bottle and even get ourselves a pretty accurate for the width of the bottle. So I'll just take this here and say, okay, that's 1. That's the width of the neck of the bottle. Now if I come down here and I start over here, 1, 2.5. So 1, 2, and then another half would be the width of the bottle. So I would come over here and say that's the width of the bottle is 2.5. So I can come down here and say that's 1. So we could look at this and say this is 1 here, 1 there, and that 1 there, and then 1 there. And we said 2.5, so now we'll go a half here, and a half here, and then we need just a little bit more, like a quarter of the way. So if we have half would be there, halfway, and then a quarter will be there. So we know we just need to add a little bit more on the sides. Like that. So it's just a matter of scaling things, really. And you can measure too. You can use a ruler at first. Once you get maybe more comfortable with using a ruler to measure things, to scale things, then you can just use your artist brush, pencil, pen, anything that you could use to just keep things accurate, using like a measuring tool, just kind of getting things somewhat close. So now for the top of the bottle we can use a circle here. So I'm going to try to, I'll just draw a circle quick just to make sure I sort of get that good. Okay, that's good. And then you can always use a straight edge. That bottle's pretty straight. It might even flare in a little bit, possibly. As I look at it, I think it's pretty much plumb. This line is plumb vertical. And I think looks good, and we have a good amount of curvature here at the bottom of the bottle. So we wouldn't just draw a straight line for the bottom of the bottle. We want to capture that curve there. You can see that. And I think that is good. We have ourselves the outside of the bottle, the perimeter, the the silhouette of the bottle. And then we can work on the label next. Let's see if we can. So the label, if we just were to take our artist brush again, and okay, that's the neck of the bottle. Okay, so the neck of the bottle, one neck of the bottle length down from the bottom of this, top of the main portion of the wine bottle will be the top of the label. I'll just go down there like that, and pretty much it's right here. And then I can, by eye, I can just see there's a little bit of wine bottle on the left side. You can always make a little more, leave a little more space if you want on the side of the bottle. That's up to you. But, and that's got a little bit of a curvature too, the label, like that. And I think that's it. I think we have everything. The only thing I would say, maybe we'll put a line across for the back of the table. And again, we can always use a ruler and measure up to get the line really accurate. 3 inches up from the bottom of the canvas, 3 inches up from the bottom of the canvas. And then we just get our straight line, and we can even put a ruler across like so. And do it that way if we want to. And that looks about good. We're going to have a little bit of a shadow over here. And the next thing we'll do is we'll take a break. It's always good to take a break. Sometimes you might not need to. Some people's concentration levels are really strong, and you can probably paint for an hour maybe or more, maybe 2 hours. Certain people I know many artists tell me that they can paint for long periods of time, for an hour or 2 or 3. Maybe, taking a break for a drink of water or something, or, something to have or something to eat. But pretty much they can work all day just, working. I usually tend to say I like to work about 15 or 20 minutes, and then I take a break for 5-10 minutes, and then I'll come back and start working again. So I like to take intermittent breaks as I work, and works for me actually. And so let's do that. Let's take a quick break. I'm hoping you're enjoying this so far. This is like more the slower, more meticulous part of the painting process, is the actual getting the sketch onto your paper. There's different ways you can sketch. You can use your paintbrush and a little bit of paint if you want, like a yellow ochre maybe color or something like that, or burnt sienna. A lot of people like to do that to block in their drawing. I find charcoal is good for me, and so that I can kind of keep things pretty accurate, and I'm just used to working with pencils all the time for many, many years. So, and then now I've been painting in oils for a couple of years, just, doing a lot of study and things like this, and I just happen to I found that the charcoal is something that I prefer to use when I do my drawings. And sometimes I will prime the canvas on this painting. I'm not going to do that, and I just go by feel whether I'm going to prime the canvas or not. It depends on the painting. And I'm still experimenting and learning new ways of priming the canvas with different colors and so forth. So, but let's get started. We're going to paint next. We just want to take a quick break. So I'll be right back. All right. I'll start putting out my paints. Usually I'll put my darker darks, just these two here, the French ultramarine blue and burnt umber. I'll put them up here at the top. So we have burnt umber and French ultramarine blue at the top. Then I'll start with my warm colors, my reds, alizarin crimson I'll start with down here. cadmium red. Yellow ochre. And next we will put cadmium yellow. Lemon yellow. And then we'll work two of our cooler colors, cerulean blue. And some phthalo green, similar to Viridian. And then I'll put a really good amount of white here. Okay, I'll put my tubes of paint next to me on my table to the right over here. And then I think what I'll start with is I'll start with my palette knife. And I'm going to try to kind of mix a yellow ochre in there. Maybe a touch of cerulean blue. Maybe a touch of phthalo green. That phthalo green is really super strong as a color. It's got very strong chroma intensity. And then maybe a little more yellow ochre. I'm just going to try to mix up like a grayish color, maybe like a nice goldish green, like kind of like a little bit like clay. I'll make it a little bit lighter there, maybe some more white. So I'm just trying to mix up the color really well. And I think that's good. So what I'll start doing is just really covering the canvas. With my palette knife. Just a thin coat of paint with the palette knife. I'll go right to the edges of the canvas. I'll try to leave that just a touch of my charcoal there, so that I can see that when I come back to do some shadowing and things. And the point is just to have fun with this. The process, you know. The palette knife is fun to use. You can get a lot of paint on quickly. With the palette knife, you can really make a lot of progress with your painting. Get a good bit of color on the canvas right from the start. That first thin coat of paint. I'm really happy with the color. And then what I'll do is later, I'll peel off the tape once we're done, and we'll paint right out to the edges of the canvas underneath that tape. So I'll make sure I save some paint for that. And I just scrape up any, scrape off a little bit of really super thick paint that I see. We can go back over this later with more paint if we like to. All right, so we have our first bit of paint on there. I'll put a little bit in the bottle too. So for me, that's good. I will clean up the palette knife here with my tissues or paper towels. And again, I'll make sure I save some of this color, maybe down here, just so we have that color to put onto the bottom of the canvas. All right, now's a good time for a break. You could let this dry overnight if you want your paint a little bit tackier and a little drier. You can let this sit for, like maybe 3-4 hours. This paint, the Winsor & Newton oil mixable paint, artisan brand paint, it dries, fairly quickly. It actually, in a couple hours, this would be kind of, a little bit set up and tacky. It wouldn't be, completely dry, but it definitely takes maybe 2 or 3 days from my experience so far. It takes around 2 or 3 days for it to really dry to the touch, where if you touch the canvas, you won't have any paint on your hand if you touch the canvas after about 2-3 days. But for this type of application, when we put the palette knife, that first glazing over our canvas here, I would say in an hour or two, it'll get a little bit tacky, and that's good. We want that a little bit, maybe to dry just a little bit, but you don't have to wait. You can just get started and go right back in and start painting over this wetter bit of paint, because it is very thin, and you can go over with the thicker paint. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to just continue painting this whole painting in one go. Okay, so I'll just take a quick break, and we'll come back. All right, so we're going to work with our brushes now. So I have these 3 brushes that we started with, and I'll use the largest one, the number 4. And we'll mix some color over here, I think, for this. A little bit of yellow ochre, white, touch of that phthalo. Maybe a little bit of that lemon yellow. A little bit of alizarin crimson over here, so I'm just going to try to mix up some color. burnt umber, a little bit in there, a little bit here. A little bit of blue. Alright, so I'm going to start, I think, at the bottom here. And work my colors here. And you can always, at a later time, once we're kind of finishing up the painting, you can go back and use some of this touch-up to touch up the edges of the bottle. I will leave a highlight on the bottle here. And this is a study, so I'm having fun. I'm just kind of looking at the light is coming from this direction, so I am kind of aware of that, but there's other light bouncing in. So the light here is sort of everywhere, so I can't really say that there's like a really strong light source from one direction. So we'll just paint it as we see it, and I'll take some more of that blue and yellow for some more of that green. And this is then you can add cross hatching if you like, and brush strokes that will kind of blend with the shapes of things. So if you have some brush strokes that are kind of curving downward at the top of the bottle here, that might be good. It helps the feeling of the shape of the bottle, the roundness at the top. And you can experiment. That's what art's all about. Have fun experimenting with your paintings and colors and your subject matter. I'm going to rinse off my brush a little bit and dry it on a paper towel. And I think we'll do the top of the bottle. That's going to be a cadmium red with alizarin crimson. So I'll just pick up my colors here. A little bit of blue. Get maybe like a violet color for the center. And then more of a cadmium red for the sides. The sides seem to be illuminated. And what we can do is, instead of leaning into the paint like I just did, You can take a brush or a wood dowel or something, curtain rods, you know, whatever you have. You could just kind of rest it on the table and then rest your hand on the top of that. And then this way we can get a better control of the brush strokes here, like this. So I just move it around as I need to. And now here the top, I don't have to worry too much. And we could take a little bit of French ultramarine blue, just to get a little more of a violet, darker dark there for the underside of the top of the bottle. That looks pretty good, like that. Maybe a little bit of a darker dark here, again, down the center, like that. And we can blend that a little more. And I might also do a little bit of this up here. And there's a bit of a dark here. I'm not going to really get too much detail as far as the interior of the bottle, where there's the you can see the dark area in the bottle where the other label is on the back of the bottle. I probably won't work that into the. I'll just maybe put a little. French ultramarine blue. And I'll just use some of this mix here. A little bit of a darker dark there. Okay, let's and that looks good. I think maybe a little bit of blue there. And I'm just going to blend in some more paint in the label area. All right, so I'm happy with this so far. I'm going to let this set for a few minutes. I'll take another quick break, but I think we're pretty much, I think this is looking pretty good. I'll go over a few more details, I think, on the back of the table. So we'll get the back of that table in, and maybe we'll make it a little lighter here, so we'll add some white I'll put some more white on the palette, and we'll put some lighter color and tonal value in the table area, and maybe we'll put a little more too in the backsplash here, the background, and we'll just neaten up some of the areas around the bottle with our palette knife maybe. All right, so we'll come back in just a few minutes and we'll start wrapping things up. Okay, so we're going to get started again here. I will take my brush and I'm just going to do a little bit of shadowing over here. Okay, and I put out some more white here. I'll take some more of that yellow ochre. Mix that up, a little bit of yellow ochre in the white. Maybe a touch of cerulean. All right, that looks pretty good. I'll just take some of this on the palette knife. And maybe I'll start out by just going to try to get the table over here. Like that. And the same thing over here. And you can put your paint as thick as you want on your painting. You can make it very, very thin. But this is the fun part for me, is kind of putting on the thicker. Lots of nice texture. And this is a table. That tends to look good if it's a table. I'm going to do horizontal marks with my, not everywhere, but sort of. Okay, maybe a little bit of a lighter light there, more of a touch more of the white, less, to maybe get a little more of a highlight along here. That, I think that looks good. And you can always go up a little bit too, higher in the to your painting. You can create it any way you want to. And then what I'll do next is a couple more lights there, maybe. We'll pretend the light's bouncing around. And then maybe we'll do some more. And again, when you're working with your palette knife, you can do the same thing. You can steady your palette knife while you're working by just using something just to help maybe. So I'm going to carefully do this. You might not so I will do it this way. Just to get that little bit of a get a little bit of a splash of light over here. So I'm going to pretend I'm seeing some light. And the same thing over here on the label. I want some light on the label. And at this point, you know, you can get more creative. You can go outside the lines a little bit. I think as long as you're happy with the way the painting looks when you're sort of finishing up your details. Then it's something that you're and then if you have to, sometimes you might put a little too much paint somewhere. You can just take some paint off of the knife, like so, the palette knife, and then you can just scrape up a little bit. And again, you can steady your hand with something like this, and then just kind of use it so you can actually I'll take some red here, straight cadmium red. And again, I might steady myself, or I might just try to rest my hands on the table here. So sometimes I'll just rest my arms on the table and then just kind of and then maybe up top here, I could do a little bit of, I always try to I only take as much as I need on my palette knife, if you can imagine. I'm only taking enough paint that I need for the area that I'm painting. So if you can imagine, when I put my red now on the palette knife here, for this area, the top of the bottle, I'm trying to actually just use a tiny bit of it because I don't need too much. I don't want to put a giant dollop of paint on there. I just want to kind of have that like that there, and that looks good. And then I'm thinking next, This is a good time for a break. Let's take another break. So sometimes when you're working on your painting, you kind of get like to a point where you say, well, how much more do I want to do? We know we might want to just we're going to do some touching up here and there a little bit. And I'll make this shadow a little, I'll touch that shadow area up a little bit. Okay, we'll take another quick break, and then I think I'll use my brush just to touch up a few areas, and I think I want to make this line a little straighter over here on the left side of the bottle, so I'll do that with the palette knife. Matter of fact, we can go in right now and kind of do that. Like that there. So you can add little areas of I wouldn't necessarily want to leave too much charcoal showing through on the painting. Okay, that's looking good. I think we're just going to take a quick break. We'll come back and do some final touch-ups, but I think we're pretty much, we'll do that with a brush maybe. All right, so we're kind of wrapping things up here. A few more details, and I think this will be complete. I wanted to narrow this bottle maybe a little bit down here on this side. So I'm going to see if I can just put a little bit with my palette knife there, just a touch of some paint there. And then if I have to go and adjust the other way just to maybe bring this darker edge out to the left over here, that's not a problem at all. I can just grab some of this over here, some of this darker, and I get a little bit of a roll on the edge here of the palette knife, and I just put a little bit there like that. That looks fine. And I'll just pick up a little bit of the light like that. And I'm going to get a little bit of the green and a little bit of a shadow over here. Just a little bit of a shadow. I'm going to try to get it in with my palette knife like that. And then I'll go back in again with some lighter. And just clean that up a little bit. And I'll probably have to get a little more white paint. So I'll take a little more of that white paint and just sort of mix up a little bit of that white paint. And just maybe there we go. So we have that little bit of that shadow there. And a little bit of that white across here for the back of the table. And I'll just try to clean up that edge again a little bit like this. This tends to be a bit of a process of just working things here and there to get things back on course again. But we have our shadow, touch of the shadow there on the bottle over here. And then we can just do a little bit of and again another bit of highlight up there like so. And I think that looks pretty good. Maybe we'll try just a little bit of detail on the label. So I'll take a round brush here. This is the number 2 round brush, and that's the hog hair again, hog hair bristle brush, round, number 4. And I'll just mix up a little bit of the blue, a little bit of burnt umber, a little bit of our gray mixture there, just to give a little bit. And then I just roll my brush around just to get a nice point on the brush like that. So you can kind of see that's a good point there. And then I'll just maybe very quickly put an indication of what I'm seeing here and not really try to spell out anything. Like I wouldn't take the letters and now start going in. You can kind of see this painting is somewhat abstract. I like abstract a lot, and so I'm going to try to do this in a more abstract fashion. So I just might do something like this, like that. Get some more dark on there. Roll my brush around, get a point on the brush, roll the brush around, get a point on there, and then I might just have that little bit of that insignia up there, like so. And maybe there's a little bit of red. We can maybe put a touch of red in the label. Maybe there's something we can just add a bit of red there, just to kind of balance out the red in the top of the bottle. Maybe a little bit of touch of red too down here. To give it some detail, but still quite abstract. And then I did want to take the top of the bottle and do a tiny bit of, just round that off a little bit up to there. Well, I hope you enjoyed this oil painting. We had a fun time. Again, that was our whole mission here. Have a great time with your oil painting. Enjoy it. come up with creative colors on your own. I kind of stuck to what was sort of here, you know, kind of that cream and tans and like a little bit of orange and yellow ochre for a little bit of the green in there, phthalo green, just a tiny bit of that in there to kind of have an overall nice, relaxed looking backdrop for everything. I tried to keep everything pretty balanced. I didn't want to go with too much light, like let's say a really bright white color for the tabletop, even though it's a little bit lighter down here. I wanted everything to sort of balance. And you can also, too, we can go in, roll that brush around again, and we can maybe do a little bit of detail along this the wall where the table meets the wall. Just an indication. Maybe I'll take a little bit of water and thin this out a little bit. And we'll see it should flow a little better on the painting, and it does. So you can see I will maybe put a little bit of a detail along this where the table meets the backdrop, like that. I think that looks good. And if you see anything else that can use some touch-up, sometimes there'll be a bit of paint that you might have left or something on there. That's not a... This is the time to do it now. As we finish up the painting, we go in and we just try to add a few little bits of detail if we... And again, I do thin down my paint now toward the end of the painting if we want to get a little bit of a dark spot or two, just to explain the table, where the table ends and the wall begins. That's very helpful to kind of describe what we're seeing here. But again, this is the final painting. I hope, again, you had a fun time with me here. We're just painting some simple still life right now, this wine bottle. And I hope you're going to continue to come back to my channel. I hope you'll subscribe if you're watching for the first time. I hope you'll subscribe. On the right-hand side below, the subscribe button, you click on that, and all it does is just each time I make a new video, we're usually making videos on my oil painting channel here. Usually once a week, we're consistently putting out new videos for oil painting. So, and we'll have lots of fun, and we'll see you on the next video again. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. That'll help us too. It'll help us to have more people come on the channel and have a lot of fun, all of us together, kind of like create a good energy here. Okay, so we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.